This is Nobody Yet, episode number 15. I'm recording this on March 13th at 9:48 p.m. Success is intoxicating, yet to sustain it requires sobriety. On this episode, I'll be talking about the second installment of Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. On a previous episode, episode 13, I talked about ego's role in the ascent towards success. And today I'll talk about ego's role in the maintaining or during the actual period of having success. This book is split into three parts: ascent, maintenance, and then downfall. And today I'll be focusing on the second part. Now, the book is written out in terms of chapters, and each chapter offers an insight into the actual category that it spans in the book. For me, I'll be talking about three chapters that are most relevant to me, or at least the ones that I think most about. When it comes to reading, I feel like reading should be done selectively. While I do enjoy reading a lot of books and a good volume of books, I think it's important to pick out what exactly to read and to skip around, and also just to skip things that aren't necessarily interesting. Of course, in a first read around, I try to read everything, but in terms of a second or third read around, in which what I'm doing for this book, I tend to skip around a little bit more and focus on what would give me the highest leverage for my current stage in life. Now, the beauty of books is that the books are always there, so I could always revisit the book and maybe another chapter would pertain more towards what I'm thinking. But at least for now, I get to pick and choose. And the chapters I picked in this chapter are actually pretty similar to the chapters I picked in the previous chapter, or in the previous section, sorry. And perhaps as more of a testament to the current stage of life in which I'm going through right now. The current stage of life I'm going through right now is one that I worked so long and that I finally achieved. Am I proper to say that I achieved the phase of success in my life? Yes and no. I would say yes in a sense of I feel like I've achieved many things that I would never have thought I would have achieved when I first entered uni, and definitely I wouldn't have thought of when I was in high school. But of course, that's not me jacking myself off and saying that, oh, look at all these things I have so much success. I feel like I'm still very much in the climb, in the sense that I'm still trying to figure out what I want in life. But also objectively in terms of a career, I'm definitely not top of the food chain or anything at all. I've just achieved things far more than I ever would have expected out of myself. So it's more of the delta between my current reality and my expectations in the past. And probably if you discount it towards today or whatever financial math that you would do in terms of expectations, so the equivalent of interests and discounting, but for expectations, I far surpassed anything I thought of myself. So that definitely is a win in my book. But with that said, let's go to success. The first chapter: don't tell yourself a story. Quote: "We want to so desperately to believe that those who have great empires set out to build one. Why? So we can indulge in the pleasurable planning of ours." End quote. Quote: "Narrative is when you look back at an improbably or unlikely path to your success and say, 'I knew it all along,' instead of 'I hoped, I worked, I got some good breaks.' Of course you didn't really know all along. Or if you did, it was more faith than knowledge. But who wants to remember all the times you doubted yourself? These narratives don't change the past, but they do have the power to negatively impact our future." End quote. This is a danger that I often find myself falling into when I talk, or in two settings. One, I talk to other people about how I arrived at my current place, whether I'm just catching up with friends, whether it be a whole life story, or something that's more recent, like the past month or past couple of weeks. And then the story I tell myself. And I think out of these two stories, the most dangerous one out of the two is the one that I tell myself. Now, to speak about the ones with friends, I think when it comes to talking with friends, there's always a sense of course I want to be genuine, but then there's a part of me which feels that I don't want to come off as being probably showing negative traits. And I purposely worded that generally because I'm missing the word I'm trying to think about right now. But I'm trying to avoid perhaps certain images of myself that other people may think. And these images may perhaps just be a flaw in my character. It's very, very alluring to give the story that I always thought about this path I was going to take. And through guts and glory, and through shooting down all the enemies, and through clawing my way over all the obstacles, I finally achieved what I set out to do right in the beginning. And it's fun to highlight all the pains. It's fun to highlight all the sacrifices I had to do, or all like the glorious lessons that I made, or how difficult every day was, especially like when I talk to my friends about things that are going on in my life. But despite of this, the reality is far more different. And of course, like the things I tell my friends, a lot of it is like, of course, trying to portray a sense of like, oh, I want to share this with you because it's really cool. But another sense is also maintaining the image that I have. And I think that in itself, despite attempting to be genuine, that this image is a genuine representation of me, it does become like ironically less genuine when I'm trying to fit myself in the image that they have in me already. Why I speak about this specifically, and I'll loop back to Don't Tell Yourself story as it pertains to the story of myself. But why I'm driving this so hard is that I've thought a lot about the image that people have of me when I was thinking about the job to pick between Chicago and New York. And I was talking to a friend about taking my current job. And I was telling him how scared I was in terms of, oh, it's going to be so much work. I don't know if I'm going to get fired. It's just so uncertain. Kind of all the tripes I could have about making a very difficult decision and working for a company that's very rigorous and known to be very, or known to have high pressure and to have high expectations. Of course, those are all things I want anyways. But I was telling my friend this, and I was telling him all my fears. And I remember him looking at me, or him saying, because we were on call, him saying, well, out of all my friends, I would think that you would probably be the best well equipped for this anyways, because you are like the hardest worker out of everyone I know. And while that definitely is a huge compliment, and I'm very grateful that he had the trust in me while I didn't have it in myself while making that decision, and that certainly helped me make that decision to go in the current route that I'm going, it often feels like that's an image I must uphold all the time to my friends. It's this image of being that hard worker who is so sure of himself and is going to charge forward and conquer, that I feel like a lot of my peers have of me. And a lot of this is like growing up. I remember growing up during COVID. So this was in university, 2020. That's like 5 years ago. Me and my high school friends would do workouts on the driveway in my house. The gyms are all closed and we need to figure out a way to work out. And the workouts we would do is we would run around the neighborhood. We would do push-ups, sit-ups, burpees, kind of like this ghetto CrossFit workout without any actual like equipment. So we weren't doing any clean and snatches. We weren't doing like pull-ups. We weren't doing like ring tricep dips or anything like that. It was just fully like this really cardio, I guess, kind of hit just very long marathon-y workouts. An example would be something like, what was that workout called? It would be something like run a mile, do 100 push-up or 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and like 100 sit-ups, and then do another mile. It would be something like that. Something like the CrossFit workout the days. And I would always set these workouts at 6 a.m. in the morning. And my reasoning was, well, A, we're all pretty busy after, so we gotta get in the morning. And B, the neighbors aren't up, so we don't have to be embarrassed if we want to take off our shirt or anything like that and go around outside because it's very hot during the summer. And then C, it's also kind of like the difficulty of doing something that hard. Like it should be this difficult. And you should feel like you're fighting against the feeling of not wanting to do it, because that's what makes the rest of the day so much easier. And that's also what calluses the mind a little bit more to do hard things. And I was pretty unrelenting about setting that time. Like, we were doing it at 6 and there's no debate. Like, just don't come if you don't want to do this. And it actually had like a lot of people come. It was actually pretty cool. Like we had like 10 people or like 8 people come, and we would just work out regularly. Now, a lot of the perceptions I gained, not of course not through this, but also through the years of evidence that I've shown, not only myself, but for my friends that knew me, is that I'm a hard worker and I'm pretty unrelenting. And I'm willing to do things that are probably unreasonable for the common person. Now, this image is cool and it's accurate most of the time. But now, if I have that image, that's something that I feel like I need to keep up for all of the time. So then now it becomes this shift or like this raft between the expectations, or at least the images that people have of me, versus my current realities. Like, for example, I fully believe in some work-life balance structure, or like a work-life harmony, as I like to put it a little bit more. But I don't think of work-life harmony in terms of a single day, but I think about it in terms of seasons, where some seasons there should be a full focus on, let's say, work or some sort of pursuit. In other seasons, there could be a focus on friends and family or dating or something like that. Now, of course, if I'm in the seasons where I'm focusing on like more social things, I'm not that focused on work, there is definitely a chasm that builds between my current realities, which is a focus on like play essentially, or like building connections, and from actual work. I'm not that relentless person who works all the time, because that's not exactly what is needed to achieve my priorities, which is going out with friends and having fun. That image fits more when I'm optimizing for work, or I'm optimizing for specific goals like recruiting or getting out of Chicago or getting that first internship or something like that. So I say this because that in itself is like a story that I'm trying to tell other people, or that I am more willing to show to other people, to confirm these images that they have of me, even though these images probably a little bit stretched and not pertaining to me at this specific time. But I have an incentive to do that, at least for me, and perhaps that is to fill my own ego of, yes, I am this hardworking, confident, and conquering person that they think I am, even though I'm not like that at the current moment. So that's the stories I tell my friends. Now, there's also like the story I tell myself. And the story I tell myself also follows similarly in line with, I'm a hard worker, or I'm a conqueror, whatever. Like, whatever my friends think of me, I also tend to think of that route myself. And yes, a lot of this is out of ego, but there is also some utility in this, in the sense of me telling myself, I am this hard worker, and therefore I'm going to grind my face off when I'm actually optimizing for work. Now, when I'm not optimizing for work, this actually creates a sense of discomfort and probably like a sense of like unnecessary suffering that I have. Like, why am I still thinking that I should work or wake up super early if I'm not optimizing for currently work? Like, I'm optimizing for health. Something I was optimizing for this past quarter was actually trying to sleep earlier and try to get good sleep. Ever since I've been wearing my Apple Watch, I've been actually seeing how much time I've been sleeping. And even though there's probably like some standard deviation error on that, I'm sleeping like less than 7 hours per night, even though I'm on the bed for like at least 8 hours. So something wrong is going on there. And that is still something I'm trying to work upon. But evidently, trying to sleep more is like flies right in the face of like working more hours, right? And evidently, if I'm trying to sleep more, my working hard should be like trying to go to bed earlier. But instead, I still fit myself in the working hard category of I'm going to grind my face off in front of my computer. So that creates like a certain sense of discomfort, because now it feels like I'm a wuss for not working super hard on like the traditional work and actually not optimizing sleep. So that's like kind of like the disjunction and the pain that I feel myself. Now, when I'm actually in the cycles and in the seasons of working hard, I feel like the images of this hard work story that I tell myself I am also does play in the contrary. Like, it does work towards a negative in some regards. In many regards, I tend to be very stubborn in how I work. I tend to work harder versus working smart, and I tend to bash my head against the wall repeatedly until the wall cracks and the wall breaks. Now, of course, like, at least the wall is broken now, but then now I'm also walking through the wall with like a broken face. Well, I could have just, I don't know, stepped over the wall or got a chisel and slowly chipped away at it. So I tend to approach problems very stupidly and just drown it with time. So it's this narrative that I tell myself that could be very detrimental to my own confidence and to the own consistency that I have in my belief in myself, for myself, and also how my friends see me. Now, this follows, like this idea of don't tell yourself a story, follows in line with the previous chapter or the previous section of get out of your own head. Maybe a quick reminder, get out of your own head was a chapter in the Ascent section of the book. And it talked about how instead of telling yourself this story, how you're going to walk into this meeting and you're going to kill it, and you're going to go in the gym and you're going to kill that, and you're this invincible person walking through life, grabbing success, in reality, you're really just some mortal human being making sense of the world. You're not that confident in everything, and you think maybe you have it, but there's still like a lot of uncertainty. But that's something you're going to figure out as you go. It's the enjoy living in fantasy, because in the fantasy world, the achievement is certain, it's easy, and it's euphoric, despite it not being reality. And the ego loves to live in this fantasy world because in your twisted imagination, that's the fantasy world, it's true. And that's kind of where get out of your own head comes in the Ascent. Now, this is very similar of don't tell yourself a story, comes when telling myself how I reached my level of success, but also where I'm currently at in my level of success. When I draw comparisons and when I think about the people who are like objectively uber successful, like the Jeff Bezoses of the world, and I think about them at 25 or at 26, I don't know their particular texture of their minds, but I think I'm confident to say that many of the very successful people did not envision themselves to be the billionaire or have the $1 trillion company or achieve the things that they have at their current age now. I'm sure they started off following their interests, and their interests snowballed gradually. And whether those interests be in business, be in research, or in terms of making money, or in terms of looking at the stock market, whatever it may be, I would bet against the fact that they saw themselves already as this hyper successful person, but they essentially just followed what was downstream for them. They just followed what made sense to them, what interested them the most, and that just snowballed them into more and more success. Here's a quote of, if you work on yourself or you work on skills, the score will take care of itself. And I'm sure that's what happened for these very successful people. Even when I think about the very successful YouTubers or the successful people, the very successful podcasters who I listen to on a daily basis, at least from their podcasts, assuming what they say is in line with what they're actually thinking of, none of them thought that they would be like a top 50 podcast in the world. They all just really started recording themselves one episode at a time. And that's how they started. And that's how they were for years, right? The success doesn't really come that fast. They didn't tell themselves this grand story that they're going to conquer this podcasting space. They really just tried and continuously got at it. And that's exactly what I should do now. I shouldn't tell myself this grand story as I'm climbing my way up into more and more, hopefully. But I also shouldn't tell myself a story of my current life, of what I'm currently working on, or how I currently work, and how I actually achieved what I achieved now. Like, I should admit that I was very lucky in many regards. I should admit that I was lazy in these many regards. I should also be truthful in terms of the areas I actually worked very hard in. I should just be more genuine in my mortality of who I am as a deeply flawed individual who's trying to figure himself out a little bit more and trying to make sense of the world a little bit more. So that is, don't tell yourself a story. Second, what's important to you? Quote, all of us waste precious life doing things we don't like, to prove ourselves to people we don't respect, and to get things we don't want. End quote. Another quote. The farther you travel down the path of accomplishment, whatever it may be, the more often you meet other successful people who make you feel insignificant. It doesn't matter how well you're doing. Your ego and their accomplishments make you feel like nothing, just as others make them feel the same way. It's a cycle that goes on ad infinitum, while our brief time on Earth, or the small window of opportunity we have here, does not. This is evidently something that I think a lot about. I wrote a recent piece on Substack about the hypothesis of my 20s. And the main message of that was, well, I came to the belief that the main thing to achieve in my 20s isn't some like monetary status. Well, I do want like financial stability, or at least like maybe knowledge stability, or like some confidence. I feel like the three pillars I should be achieving for is agency, conviction, and something else. It's kind of embarrassing. Agency, conviction, and agency. Okay, yeah. Agency, conviction, authenticity are the three things that I feel like I should be optimizing for in my 20s. And those are three things that I want to discover in my 20s. Now, this falls right in the sense of authenticity, of what is truly important to me. And this is thinking about the greater picture of what exactly I'm optimizing for. Now, if I actually put this a little bit operationally, and I think about the values, like the agency, the conviction, and the authenticity, I think about whether my daily actions actually follow along there. I'll give one example. So one example is agency. I say I value agency a lot. And by definition, I like to define agency as having the power, which is the ability and speed to put thought into action. But agency is having the power to pursue whatever I want. This means that I'm making decisions based on my own interests and based on maybe like what I believe smells the most interesting. I think of it as like if I'm like a mouse and there's like a scent of cheese, it's just me trying to figure out where that piece of cheese is and bumping into walls and falling off tables and just trying everything to find that piece of cheese that I find most interesting. Now, evidently, this is based on my interests and not the interests of others. This is where being very stringent of what's important to me and following my values is very important. Because while I do value agency, I find myself still get swayed by what others are optimizing for. And I often get entranced by what other people have. In a sense, it feels like ego could still really crack my resolve in my values of agency in this specific example, in which then other negative habits like envy could kind of seep through. I remember meeting people who were far more successful in my field. Like, let's say in trading, they went to a more successful trading firm. I was in a top 5 firm, and let's say the people that I met went to like a top 1 or top 2 firm, and they were making like double as the amount that I would make. So on paper, they had more money and they had more status than I had. And it made me feel a certain type of way, like being around them. It feels like, in some sense, it feels like there's a sense of inferiority that comes up of, oh my God, I'm not good enough and I don't match up to them. Even though these people are like super kind and they don't see themselves as superior. Or maybe they do, but they don't show it. So there's like this sense of inferiority that comes up a little bit. And then there's also the sense of envy that comes up in the sense of, oh, I want what they have. And I'm going to work my face off to get what they have. Right? But then this comes a question of, well, if I'm being swayed like this, is this me having that agency? Is it me being authentically myself and choosing what to pursue? Is this what I really want? Do I really want what those people have? And how can I be so sure that I really want what they have? Or instead of like those deeper questions of do I really want what they want? Do I really just want what they want for the superficial things that I could presently see? And then I'm also discounting, I'm also ignoring all the negative downsides that actually might be present. These are things that I need to constantly remind myself as I meet more people, and as I go through life experiences. Like, there's no doubt that as I become more successful or I go on in my career, I'm going to meet more and more successful people. So it's very important to develop this value of agency and to be really, really in touch of what's important to me so that I don't be swayed by, in this case, envy when meeting these other people. So that's the interactions with other people and thinking about what's important. It's also important to align my current actions with what I think is fundamentally important. Because, of course, if my actions don't align with what I believe is important, then do I actually believe what I believe is actually important, or I'm just saying that to sound good? Kind of like this story I tell myself. So then it's kind of like that analysis on action that I currently want. One example of this that actually touches in the next point a little bit later is thinking about a promotion. Now, obviously, a promotion is something that probably everyone would strive for, or that at least everyone sees as a net positive. And for me, obviously, like, it is some positive. Like, I get more status, I get more money, whatever. I maybe don't get more responsibilities, but definitely more expectations. But when I think about it in my current place, do I really care about getting a promotion, assuming I still get to do the same or an increasing amount of work and increasing amount of responsibilities? I'm already financially stable. Like, I enjoy the amount that I make. Obviously, everyone loves to make more, and I would enjoy making more, but I'm okay with the current amount I make. And the status of being like a senior engineer instead of being like a software eng 2, like, that's cool, but what does that really do? Like, can I trade that title for a successful business or into finding my passions? The answer for that is no. Like, I can't really trade that for anything. That's just like a title I got to slap onto my LinkedIn. So in that regard, this promotion or this hypothetical promotion does not fall in line with what I'm optimizing for. At this current stage in life, I'm optimizing for finding my interests, going towards those interests, like the mouse wafting towards the cheese, and learning as much as possible. If I could learn as much as possible without having a promotion, mission accomplished, right? Because my goal is to learn as much as possible and to gain the skills so that I could hopefully do something by myself, or when I do something by myself, it's much more frictionless, it's much more natural. But that's an example of trying to align my goals with my values and then my everyday actions. And now my everyday actions are prioritized in learning more instead of like doing things that look good for promotion. In terms of how to like operationalize this, so there's definitely like the operationalizing of aligning actions with goals, with values, or with what actually matters. I think the most important part in this sense is being really honest with fundamentally what I want and connecting all of this together. Another is identifying the envy when I feel it, and then continuously trying my hardest to redirect my mind away from that envy and away from that fixation I have on that thing. There's also a sense of like gratitude that comes here. It's reminding myself that my life is pretty good. Like, it goes beyond my wildest expectations that I had when I was younger, like I mentioned earlier. And because my life is already pretty good, I don't need to constantly suffer and think that it's anything less than that. I don't have to think about anything that, oh, I could have that, I could have this, I could have that. But to be happy with what I currently have. Not to say I don't want more, but just to be grateful with what I have. And move away from envy as soon as I feel it and as soon as it pops up. The third chapter, and this will go with my second example, but it's beware the disease of me. Quote, it's beginning to think that we're better, that we're special, that our problems and experiences are so incredibly different from everyone else's that no one could possibly understand. End quote. Another quote. Early on in our careers, we may be able to make these sacrifices more easily. We can drop out of a prestigious college to start our own company, or we can tolerate being looked over once in a while. Once we've made it, though, the tendency is to switch to the mindset of getting what's mine. Now, all of a sudden, awards and recognitions matter, even though they weren't what got us here. We need that money, that title, that media attention, not for the team or the cause, but for ourselves, because we've earned it. Beware the disease of me. This really goes with the feeling or like this belief of I have developed all these skills from all my internships, all my professional experience, to my current point in life. And because I believe I have these skills, I believe I should get a certain level of pay, or I should be promoted, or I should have had these things that are rewarded to me based on performance. Now, obviously, it's a different question of whether like my performance in my current position actually falls in line with those accomplishments and with those like perks. But it's like, this is the question I'll talk about of fully believing that like I deserve this, right? And I realized for me, a big part of the suffering I had a little bit earlier was the difference in the belief I had in myself, which was driven by ego, and reality. In my previous episodes, I talked about how I was a little bit sad and perhaps I was regretting a decision I had between two jobs. Between the two jobs I was searching for, or I had, the other job that I didn't select had a senior engineer title, while my current job has a software engineer level 2, like the level below senior. And obviously the other job had more base pay at the current time. For me, I realized a big part of my sadness that I had, or like the suffering I had in the previous couple of weeks, was based on the difference I had in the belief I had in myself. I thought that I deserved a senior engineer title. So when I don't have that in my current job, there was that pain that I felt of, no, I should be gifted this title, even though I, at least in my opinion, haven't made the work to actually deserve this title in my current position. And then two, additionally have that regret of, oh, I could have picked this other opportunity and had that title bestowed upon me when joining, and achieve what I really deserve. And of course, there's like two forces coming to play here, is the difference of reality with my ego, like the fantasy world and what's actually reality that's causing me pain. And then the regret of choosing a different option that's giving me the theoretical less status on LinkedIn, that is also causing me that pain of, oh, I feel like I could have this, or I feel like I should have this. And it's identifying that, right? Identifying that that is coming from my ego, and that's like a disease of me, is believing I deserve these things once I have achieved a certain level of success. And when I connect this back to what's important to me, I think about it. Does having a bigger title actually matter to you? And does earning less than you would have actually matter to you in terms of what you're optimizing for in the greater regard? No, it doesn't matter, because I'm optimizing for wisdom, I'm optimizing for knowledge, I'm optimizing for hopefully I could pursue my own thing in the future. So no, it doesn't matter. B, are you the only one in this position? Are your problems unique to you? The answer is no. When talking to other people at my company, they've also had the same concerns. Maybe some of them are not working on the project that they like, or some of them are a little bit stuck. Needless to say, this is not a problem that I'm only experiencing. There's like other people experiencing this problem. Now, of course, there's many other people who are not experiencing this problem, but that's to say that I'm not the only one going through this. This problem is not unique to me. And even though my ego is definitely there and makes me want to believe that this problem is unique to me, and it makes me feel special, and it makes me feel like I deserve special treatment, even though I totally do not. So, B, am I the only one in this position? No, I'm not. C, does having a bigger title change, or does having a bigger title and having a bigger salary change my day-to-day actions and responsibilities? The answer to that is no. My current situation, it operates pretty flat, and you get a lot of responsibility. So does having a bigger title fundamentally change my work? No. Does it change what I could learn? Also no. Does it change the impact I could have? Probably not. I'd have to climb much higher for that. So the answer overall is no. It doesn't really change my realities other than the number hitting my bank account and what's on my LinkedIn. And if that's not what I'm optimizing for, agency, authenticity, and conviction, then it shouldn't matter at all. So this is me really trying to diffuse the disease of me to think that I'm so smart, and because I'm smart, I deserve all these things. And also, oh my God, look at these problems. They only affect me. A good reminder to have to myself when consistently reframing and avoiding ego in this manner is that, then this is the same quote I mentioned before. After all the work that I've done, the score will take care of itself. And in this sense, score is what I'm optimizing for. The score will take care of itself. The things that I've learned, the experiences that I have, and even the fledgling financial compensation, the salary, and the title, those things will all take care of by itself. I need to focus on the work and on reality, because those are the things that matter. Reality matters because I'm living in it, and work is the thing that would actually affect reality. Fantasy doesn't affect reality. Ego doesn't affect reality. Just input could produce output. That's the only thing that would affect reality. It just matters on my execution. So I need to stop whining and stop complaining about my situation and just put in the work, because that's all there is to it. But yeah, those were 3 things that I've been thinking about in terms of the second chapter of Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And I actually would like to continue. There's something else on my mind. And perhaps I talked a little bit about this previously, but I want to just nail the point even more. I've been thinking about the concept of unteachable lessons for a good amount of time now. Chris Williamson, I got this formalized from Chris Williamson of Modern Wisdom when he went over an episode and he summarized the key lessons he learned over the past year or the past 2 years. And this is an idea that I always had an idea of, but I couldn't really put a finger on it. But the title Unteachable Lessons is a really good portrayal of what this represents. These are the lessons in life that we inherently know are true. It's lessons like money doesn't buy happiness, or you should visit your parents more, or friends really matter. It's lessons like this that we inherently know are true, but are not fully ingrained in our behavior, right? It's whenever we're told by let's say a billionaire who says money doesn't buy happiness, it's us telling that billionaire that's stupid. And if I was a billionaire, I would definitely be happy. It's us having the hubris to believe that we will be the special ones that will have the escape velocity to zoom past all the issues that plague so many people who have the certain conditions in which the lesson becomes reality. For me, the unteachable lesson that I have a lot that I'm constantly reframing, I'm constantly battling with, is the most trite one. Is the most stereotypical money and status doesn't buy happiness. And even though I know for a fact that for me it doesn't buy happiness and that it's definitely not sufficient because I need more meaning and more value in what I actually work, it's still something I find myself swayed by, or at least more that I'm proud to admit. And I recently been reading a lot of books just in this field, and it's not necessarily psychology books. I like reading more biographies and memoirs of successful people, and not so much I could learn their habits. I could definitely learn their habits. I could learn successful businesses. I could learn the stories, which are all things that I love to read about. But I could also learn their relationship as it pertains to money, and it's me trying to teach myself the unteachable lesson and ingrain it without actually becoming a miserable billionaire or like a miserable like multimillionaire or something like that. It's me trying to get ahead of the curve and do things the right way and do things in the avenue in which I'm trying to actually optimize for. One book that I read that's actually a really quick read and that instilled this in me a little bit more is Barista to Billionaire, and it's a book by Andrew Wilkinson, who is a billionaire. He was previously touted as the Warren Buffett of tech, where he held a holdings company and he acquired a lot of tech companies. So like for MMA, and he grew his net worth in that sense. So it talks about his story, how he started like making minimum wage as a barista and ended up starting a design firm that became decently successful over years and over a lot of hard work, over panic, over just chaos, to eventually become the CEO or like he was already CEO, but become the founder or like the manager of the CEO, and then like the CEO of like the portfolio companies or like all his portfolio companies, who overlooks all of them. And his rise to the top was actually really interesting for him, like detailing that process. But something that was most interesting and was actually a big theme in the book was him talking about a lot of the trappings of wealth he experienced on his rise to become a billionaire and the people he interacted with. And for him, a big motivation of being a billionaire was not having money growing up, or money being a big issue in the household that his parents always bickered about. So for him, he had like this latent drive for wealth because of his insecure childhood. And he talks about how his viewpoint of wealth changed over time. And there was one particular story that stood out to me and that I really took away from this book. He gave the story of his come up. And at this point, I believe he was really wealthy, but he wasn't like a billionaire or anything yet. And he was asking around what like these people did with their money, because he noticed that he had a lot of money, but like, what was he doing with it? Like, he didn't really know what to do with it. And he was told that, well, a lot of people like buy yachts and like buy boats. So he figured, well, I should do this. And before buying a boat, he had like the insight to like rent a yacht and figure out what is like first before actually committing full force. So he rented a yacht for like a week and he sailed, let's say on the coast of Italy or something with a bunch of friends. And he detailed how it was like a wonderful experience. The service staff were super nice. The food was great. The view was great. The weather was great. The yacht was great. Everything was great for the first like 2 days. And then for the rest of the week, it was very much like a copy paste of the previous day. He sat at the same table with his friends and ate like the similar things. He would spend his time sitting on the deck of the boat, just chilling, right? And by the end of his trip, he was just so excited to go back. And when he was finally on land and a week passed, he got the bill for his yacht and he looked at it and he was like, oh my God, this is like disgusting. Like the amount of money that week of renting the yacht costed. And that story is like a very good story, at least for me, I think about in terms of thinking a lot of the luxuries that I think I want to have are probably going to be normalized pretty quickly. And this is something I already knew instinctually, like from my previous achievements. Of course, where I was nowhere close to buying a yacht or maybe even renting a yacht, at least from my previous achievements, I know that getting a FANG job, for example, will be cool for like a week or two, but then that becomes normalized over time very quickly. And the pursuit of, or me trying to solve unteachable lessons, is trying to answer the question, how can I avoid this trapping of pursuing things out of desire for money and status? These are the things that I know will not fit with what I'm optimizing for, instead of my true desire of actually just following what I'm interested in. So it's trying to how to get ahead of the curve and not have to be hit with a brick to actually learn that lesson. And I think for me personally, this is just a really big reframing practice over and over and over again. It's like painting layers of paint over a house. Just 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, until the paint becomes fully opaque under the sun. Is to make sure that there is no coats or like no weaknesses in the colors, such that I could see the underlying envy or the underlying weakness that there could have in my mental state. It's constantly applying the levels of paint. Now, if I operationalize this, there are 3 methods in terms of actually like reframing this in my head, of like drilling this unteachable lesson into my conscious more and more. One, it's extrapolating from previous experience. So this is what I mentioned earlier. It's thinking about my previous experiences, interning at Amazon, interning in trading, getting a good university, and thinking about how normalized those events became. It's trying to extrapolate from these small wins into the really grand ones. And of course, extrapolating is never perfect, but is operating under the assumption that the core feeling of looking forward towards achievement and putting my whole worth towards achievement, that this placement of worth towards achievement is misaligned and will just be normalized later on. And is trying to extrapolate that core feeling from previous experiences. That's one. 2, it's continuously reading about the lives of other successful people. Of course, you can learn so much from successful people. You can learn how they live their lives, how they run successful businesses. And the third one is, of course, how they dealt with the trappings of wealth. It's how they dealt with their rising fortunes, how many of them squandered it, how many of them became addicted to money, and how many of them became sad. And of course, there's the flip side of how many of them became very happy with the lives that they lived, how Charlie Munger was happy living in his small home that he bought in like the 1950s or something. It's learning from those core stories, from these successful people who walked further than you may ever walk. And is trying to learn these lessons from these other people before you walk down that route as well. Now the third method in terms of drilling down in this unteachable lesson is the repeated identification when my judgment is being swayed in a particular fashion. It's to try to catch myself from falling into the method of thinking and drawing away from my authentic self. So it's whenever I think too much about money and status, is trying to identify that, put a pin in that, and say, hey, Eric, you're thinking too much about money and status. Take a step back, think about what's really important, and then go from there again. So it's having the faith that I could constantly catch myself and be aware of my own thought process. But yeah, that has been 3 lessons of Ego is the Enemy, and that has been what I'm thinking about, unteachable lessons. And it's something I'm really excited to learn more about myself and try to fix with like the layers of paint. Now, looking ahead, I'm excited for the next quarter of the year. The first quarter, I was optimizing, not really for work, actually. I was optimizing for New York. I was optimizing for friends a little bit. I was optimizing for health. A big one was actually on health. And now that the season's ending, I feel like I learned some main lessons and I made some progress in life in those regards. And I'm excited for the next lesson or for the next quarter. I think maybe I'll do that next episode where I'll document what I'm thinking about or what I'm planning to do. And we'll go from there. But yeah, thank you for listening to this episode, and I'll see you next week.